Hello, this is Dr. Roger Bromé, and today we're going to talk a little bit about uh, overspeed eccentrics using bands and chains to work with our strength curve. It was discovered by the Russians um, decades and decades ago that as our leverages improve, with our lifts and with our movements, our strength improves with the leverages. And so with that, we have a particular strength curve. Now, those of you that are familiar with going to the commercial gym, if you look at a lot of the machines that are available to you in a commercial gym, a lot of them have a pulley or some sort of a system that actually makes different parts of that exercise harder and easier. And that is to work within that strength curve. So, for example, in the squat, when we hit that bottom end and our hips are in complete flexion, our knees are in complete flexion, that is when those joints are really at their weakest. We're a lot stronger as the joints become straighter. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit about how to use rubber bands on the bar. This was something that was used outside of the gym and not on barbells until Louis Simmons and at Westside Barbell got with a guy named Dick Hartzell and looked at what Dick Hartzell was doing for exercise with rubber bands. And he bought a bunch of bands, went back to the gym and said, hey, we've got to figure out how to put these on barbells and different exercises to see how we can improve that resistance. Excuse me. So one of the things about resistance with bands is that the longer that the band gets stretched out, it becomes tighter and tighter. It's tension rather than just weight. So the gravity of a bar is consistent all the time. As long as it's off the ground, it weighs just the same. But with a band, the more you stretch it out, the more it kind of curves into a tighter and tighter tension. Now, one of the things that Louis talks about is overspeed eccentrics. That means that as I lower this weight toward the ground, the rubber band is pulling. It's not just pulling like gravity, it's actually pulling faster than gravity. Now, the eccentric movement in strength training and weightlifting is the movement that actually creates muscle tissue damage. And that is what gives you the ability to build bigger and stronger muscles. But also the concentric part, coming up back to a standing position in the squat, will make it so that you really have to do it more explosively. You use more motor units to move that weight because you have to outrun the tension of the band. The higher up you go, the tighter that tension becomes, and actually the weight just starts to build and build and build. So the resistance builds and builds and builds very quickly. So even to set this up was very difficult. Now, what I do to give an estimate of what my top weight is, what I will do is I'll record the bar weight, and then I will add, and I would say it's an estimated weight based on this handheld deli scale. This goes up to 600 pounds, so I can get plenty of tension on it and stuff. But what I'll do is I'll just set the band up, and then I'll hook this around the band, and I'll pull it up to the same height that I would at the top of my lift. And I'll read that per side. And then I'll say, okay, well, this is how much band tension that I have. So on this particular bar setup, I've got about 25 pounds of band tension on each side. So that means I've got 135 pounds on the bar, plus another 25 and 25 in top band tension. That means that when I get down toward the bottom here, I'm gonna have a lot less tension. So it'll be maybe 150 pounds at the bottom in the squat. But as I start raising toward the top, I get closer to that 185. So this is gonna be about 185. The last thing that I want to mention about this is this will change the way the bar feels on your back. There's a couple of different things to that. When you unrack the weight, you'll have to be tight. You'll have to be tight through your core and through your back. Everything needs to be tight when you unrack that weight, and you'll feel it when it pulls. So that's a big part of it. The other thing is that you have, because it's pulling so hard down this way, you have less horizontal movement. So it will feel a lot like doing squats on a Smith machine where it's guided by the tracks. So there are some advantages and disadvantages. While you get the advantages of the overspeed eccentrics and the need to explode out of the hole, you do have a stabilizing factor to the weight that makes it so that the weight doesn't come forward and backwards so easy on you. There is a caveat to that. If you get set up on this wrong and you squat down and you get out of position, you're out of position with overspeed eccentrics. So you have to be careful with the band tension a little bit, but use it to your advantage. And there's a lot of different size bands that you can use. I've got a whole set of bands that I have here and I hang on the wall. But the other great thing about bands is they fit inside your gym bag well. So if you work out at a commercial gym, or you're going to work out at Utah Fire and Rescue Academy, in preparation for the RCA, you can do that, and you can bring bands with you. Now, you can see, and I will show a little bit more closely how this is set up, but you can see that I've got pegs in my cage, and my cage is set up to put bands in it. That's the way it was designed. More and more cages are designed this way, but there's a lot of them in the commercial gym that are made that aren't. So if you don't have the ability to put pegs in or wrap your bands around the cage in some way, another way that you can do it is put really, really heavy dumbbells on the floors, and I've done that. It's especially useful if your gym has hex dumbbells and you've got some that are about 100 pounds, because again, this is 50 pounds of band tension total. So it's 25 aside. All I need to do is I just need to put a couple of weights down that will overcompensate for that and not move. So you got to play with this a little bit. Now I'll show you kind of the setup by moving the camera over and showing you how I set this up specifically. What I've got on this setup is I've got a rear peg. This gives me the ability to put the tension across to the front peg and then up around the bar. Again, the bar is held in place. I have this set up, and I'm going to use my monolift holders today so that I can get under it, get ready to squat. And then just pick the bar up and do the squat movement. So that's how I have the band set up on both sides. So what I'll do on a dynamic effort day is I will set up a bar with some bands on it, and I will do anything from 3 reps to 1 rep. Typically I do 1. I found that doing 1 rep will give me the ability to go down and explode back up, work that neurological system, and get this speed and the dynamic work that I want to get done. And then what I do is I space those sets out anywhere from about 45 seconds to a minute, 15 seconds. I wouldn't go longer than about 90 seconds. But if you're working out with a partner and that kind of stuff, you'll have, weight adjustment times in between and things like that. So maybe if I'm working out with somebody that's stronger than me, I'll have a couple of plates on the bar and some bands, and they'll need 3 plates on the bar or a quarter, and we'll take those off as we go back and forth. But the point is is you want to get about a total of anywhere from 12 to 18 sets. If I use really, really lightweight and some pretty reasonable band tension, you want your band tension to be around 20 to 30% of the total bar weight. So the bar weight, to calculate this, you start with is about 50 to 70% of your maximum effort free squat. So if you're doing, 405, putting 205 on the bar is about 50%. Then put the band tension on there, and if you put the band tension on there at about 25 pounds on each side, that's another 50 pounds. Now you're up to 255 pounds, and you move that just as fast as you can move it, so that it's a very dynamic effort. You want to get down in the hole and then spring back up as quickly as you can. It'll give you that explosive strength. So just to summarize, I get the band tension on about 50% bar weight to 70% bar weight of my 1 rep max. Put on about 20% to 30% tension, and then move that weight anywhere from 1 to 3 times in sets, usually around 6 to 12 sets. And you can see with all of those different rep schemas, weight schemas, band tension ratios, all that, you just have infinite amounts of ways to switch this up. So the good thing about doing that is that you get a little bit different load, a little bit different exercise each time. It works your muscles a little bit different. It's a way to keep yourself from falling into that law of accommodation where your body gets used to a particular weight and then it stops making progress. So that's the way to use positive band tension. There is a way that I'm not going to demonstrate that's reverse band tension, and that's where you hang the bands up around here and around the bar and then load the bar full of weight. That makes it so that the lower you go, the more of the weight the bands take, and it becomes lighter toward the bottom. And then as you accelerate up, you're getting more and more to what that realistic tension is. Some lifters use that as a way of being able to, like, maybe put, if their squat is 500, that they're working on is 500 at the top, they might be able to put 525 at the top and then put a band on it, and then by the time it gets down to the bottom, it's lower than 500, so they come out of the hole with lower than 500, but by the time they get to the top and the band tension has released, they're 25 pounds heavier than their 1 rep max. So that's some ideas. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about that. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but this is a basic way to set up band tension to give you that overspeed eccentrics. You can see here, there's a very simple chain setup. Different people set up chains a little bit differently. I have these chains that are made with kind of an end collar on them. There's good and bad with that. Some people just use a chain, hang a piece of webbing over, let the webbing hang down about halfway, and then hook their chains around the bottom, because you can see that this top isn't really doing much. But as you watch me lift in the following demonstration, you'll see that the chain gathers on the ground, and as the chain gathers on the ground, the load on my back becomes lighter. And then as I start to go back up, each link adds just a tiny bit more weight. And you can see that this isn't overspeed eccentrics. This is literally just a shift in the actual gravitational weight. So this is one of the things that you can use to work that strength curve, that the band will work, but without having that tension build as you come out of the hole. Sometimes after, a couple of weeks of doing bands, body will start feeling kind of beat up a little bit. And if you're not really, recovering from that band work, as well as you could be, sometimes it's good to switch out to chains. The other thing that you can do is by using large carabiner, you can clip that carabiner halfway on this chain and then hook another chain on the bottom, and you can just add chains and add chains and add chains. So that way, same thing, using the scale, you can pick the chain up off the floor about where it is, and you can measure about how much added weight that is. So how I record this is the bar weight here is 225. Each one of these chains is 25 pounds. So it's 25 and 25 is 50. So 225 plus 50 is about 275 pounds. Squat this about 3 times, rack it, wait about 60, 90 seconds, do it again, wait, do it again. Again, you're looking for doing bands and chains on dynamic effort work anywhere from 6 reps, a little bit heavier weight, or 6 sets of 1 to 3 with a little bit heavier weight. When you go a little bit lighter, then you can add volume and do maybe 10 to 12 sets of 1 to 3. And you'll find that as you start getting into those later sets, you know, your form might start to break down a little bit, or you might start feeling the bar slow down. The goal to doing dynamic work is to try and keep that bar absolutely moving as fast as you possibly can through the whole lift. That will change. Some days you don't feel as fatigued and as sore, so you'll be able to move that bar really quick. Other days when you're feeling kind of stiff, don't feel like you slept very well or something, don't worry about trying to meet that bar speed. Again, it's dynamic effort. You want to give it as much effort as you've got that day, and that will be good enough. On this band set up for the deadlift, it's the same idea. I've got a band, but this is a double strand of band. You can use a single strand of band, or you can double the bands. I'm using very light band here, so I doubled it. This band, once it's pulled up to about waist high, it measures around 25 pounds. So again, if you're looking at 15 to 25 pounds, that means the bar weight is about bar weight at the ground. There's a little bit of tension on there, but really not that much, maybe 5 pounds with both sides put together. So I've got 225 pounds on the ground. If my max, 1 rep max deadlift is 450, I put 225 on the bar on the ground, add some band tension, and that band tension when I get up to the top is again gonna be around, 50 pounds total on both sides. 225 plus 50 is 275. Now, if you consider with a deadlift, you can go sumo, you can go conventional, you can do this on a deficit, or you can do this as rack pulls. Again, you have so many options to make this a different lift that you can really mix this up over time. So even with just the bands and the chains that I've showed you on the squat, changing that around with different kinds of squat, whether it's a Zerker squat, the front squat, deadlifting, whether it's conventional, rack pulls, deficits, all of this stuff really gives you almost a year's worth of changes without really buying any more equipment. So what I recommend is that you get a set of bands that have a very light band to a pretty heavy band, and you can put those in your gym bag. That's how I did it at the commercial gym for a lot of years, is just take the bands with me, and then when I get to the point I've done a couple of warm-up sets with straight weight, put the bands on and start getting to work on the dynamic effort. Now I'm showing you this in all the videos on dynamic effort day, but bands and chains work on max effort day too. It allows you to make sure that the top end of your lift is maybe even a little bit heavier than a maximum effort lift would be. So for example, if my deadlift is 450 pounds, I put some band tension on 450 pounds. By the time I clear my knees and I start heading up toward lockout, I'm getting up there around, for 50 or 500 pounds, that kind of a thing. So bands and chains can work. There's tons of ways to hook this stuff up on the internet. I'm just going to show you a couple of reps with this to show you the dynamic effort, and I'm going to do this with a conventional deadlift. So a few last comments on the deadlift using bands for overspeed eccentrics. This will really challenge your grip. As you get higher up and that bar starts to want to rip out of your hands, you really have to get a good grip on it. So be aware that when you're using bands on a deadlift, you're gonna have to start with a really good grip. Make sure that you're squeezing that bar tight before you pull. If you're doing this for max effort and you're putting bands on it, and just like I would say, if you're doing rack pulls to really do the overload, again, what you're gonna wanna use is some wrist wraps. Get those around the bar and pull them fast. This exercise, excuse me, is to work your hip hinge, your glutes, your rear strength chain. It's not to work your grip. So there are a lot of strength athletes and coaches out there that will tell you minimize your use of straps. I agree with that to some extent. There's a lot of other ways though to work your grip, not only with grippers and rubber balls and doing hangs on the bar for time. There's a lot of different ways to work grip. When I work my deadlift, I just work my deadlift. So out of convenience and also out of, you know, getting used to not using wraps for competition, I sometimes won't use my wrist straps, but if I'm really going heavy and I know that my grip is going to be the challenge on whether or not I finish the lift, I'll put my wrist straps on, because again, I'm trying to work my back, my glutes, my hamstrings, my hips. I'm trying to work those bigger muscles, not really the muscles in my hands. So don't forget to have your wrist straps in your gym bag as well.